There we go. I get to see myself. We're using some new technology, new to us anyways, today. YouTube and Slido. You should have received links to all of those. As the title says, I'm Robert Grosshandler, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to the first in what we hope is a long series of webinars and tools to help you use AI and some of the modern tech web stuff to make promulgating your nonprofit work better. And to give you an expert on all of these things, I've asked my partner Judson Moore to join us today and talk about how you can write a press release using AI. So Judson, I'm handing it off to you.
My name is Judson Moore, and I've recently joined iGive as the Director of Cause Relations, and that means that I'm here to support causes and nonprofits working with iGive. My background, I grew up in Kentucky, born in Kentucky, grew up then in Louisiana through my teenage years, and eventually made my way over to Texas. I grew up as a child of the community theater, and and that eventually got me connected with other community activists, and eventually made some connections inside of Rotary International, who saw it fit to send me to Germany for a year as an exchange student, and then that just changed my whole life after that. And so I've really been in a pursuit of thinking about internationalism and community and how to pull those things together. I later served in the Peace Corps in Central Asia, in the country of Kyrgyzstan, and after which I've had about 10 or 12 years of a career in tech and entrepreneurship. And so I'm really passionate about bringing all those things together to help support local communities through technology. And so that's what I hope to accomplish a little bit here today. Right, so the first order of business, I was already saying this, I'll say it quickly, but scanning this QR code or clicking the link in the text description below the video on YouTube will bring you to a website where we're collecting questions. We already had some questions come up in from the registration form. There were some really great themes that we saw there, so we've pre-populated a few questions. There's also a like feature where you can upvote individual questions and say, oh, that's really interesting to me. I'd like to make sure that's addressed. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to answer as many of those as we can or follow up afterwards with additional information. Okay. So, where do we begin? Okay, so just want to note that we are recording today's session. So that means that we will be able to share this presentation on YouTube after it concludes. So if you know anyone who you think would benefit from this information, they will be able to get this after the fact. So we have about 30 minutes or so where we're going to go through a couple slides and show some ideas and concepts about working with AI, what your options are in the artificial intelligence space. We're going to do the live demo that we discussed about writing a press release and talk about some additional best practices. After that, we've dedicated about another half hour, or as long as we need, to go through those questions as they relate to artificial intelligence. You'll notice here in the corner of this slide, again, that QR code. That's going to be present on almost every slide in this presentation, so if you did not get a chance to scan it before, you can scan it later. And again, that text link to the Q&A is also in the text description. Okay, so today's audience, I thought it'd be interesting. You know now a little bit about us, but how about yourselves? So of the people who registered in advance, about half of the audience has worked with AI before. So that's great. There's already some at least basic understanding of AI, what does it look like and where to go and how to interact with it. The common use cases were writing text documents, some imagery, and also getting inspiration for like variations of different ideas. But there was also a whole lot of questions and also some skepticism about AI and is it ready for mainstream and that sort of thing. So what is AI exactly? Well, we're not going to get into the technical description or the very long history that's led us to today's capabilities, but the large language models that we hear about in the news every day these days, they're basically very, very smart based on what they have been able to read on the internet. So all the world's knowledge that's out there on the internet, good or bad, real or fake or quality or low quality, it's seen a lot of that content. And so it has this sort of a sense of a predictive sense about what things are supposed to look like. And so when you ask a question, it has a good sense of what an answer might look like, and then it can expand on itself, on its own response, based on, hey, I've said this much, what else could I continue saying? What would a feasible answer look like based on everything I've seen in the entire data of the internet? So it's really impressive, and if you've read much about artificial intelligence, the consumer AI movement that's been going on for the last year and a half or so, it's obviously, there's a lot of very impressive things out there, but it most certainly is not perfect. And that is going to be a running theme today, is talking about its imperfections. But that doesn't mean it's not a valuable tool that we can all use and learn from, and also make parts of our life easier already today. So first, we have an example. If you received an invitation to this webinar by email, then you already have seen a little bit of what comes next, but we're going to unpack it a little bit. And it's basically the image that we used for inviting and promoting this webinar by email. And so that was an AI generated image, and I went in to an AI and I gave it this prompt. I said, create an image that I can use to promote a webinar for how nonprofit organizations can work with AI in their daily workflows. And there's a couple pieces to this, right? What am I actually asking for? Well, I've indicated I want it to create an image for me, right? It's not going to produce text in this account. It's going to produce an image. The reason is I want to promote a webinar, and the audience is going to be nonprofit organizations, and the theme is going to be around AI, right? So it has something to go off of. It's not a huge prompt, but it has a concept where I should go. Well, the first image was this one here. And yeah, okay, we have some technology. We have kind of a thinking robotoid character. We have a pretty bad misspelling, but sort of recognizable text around nonprofit in there. So it's not quite what I was hoping for. So I went back to it and I said, okay, well, how about use some humor and make it a little bit more lighthearted, because I thought that was kind of a hardcore image. So I thought about that additional information, and it gave me this guy. And I thought this was great. I said, oh, he's so funny. He's got this nice smile. Look at that cute little bow tie. Now it's actually saying in more accurate language, make a difference with AI, and it's tying in the concept of community and making an impact and nonprofits. But we also can tell there that the text is not perfectly spelled. There's still some issues with it. But nonetheless, we're doing a lot better already with just these two prompts. But I thought, actually, now that it changed those colors, it's a good idea. Maybe I should ask it to use the brand colors for iGive so that it's a little bit more on brand for us. And so I said, use more of these colors. And then these are the kind of web codes for the colors that you see on the screen. So these are the iGive primary brand colors. And it came back with this guy. So still friendly, still AI for good, still playing with the language. It says webinar, that's great. And it's understood orange and shades of blue. But it's not really the brand colors, right? If I was trying to do a brand campaign, this probably isn't it either. But again, between this and the previous image, I thought I had something I could work with. But then I realized, it's given me these square images, which is the default, and it's a very common cropping, but I needed something that I could put into an email header. So I needed to be wider. So I said, hey, try again, but please use these dimensions in pixels. And it gave me this guy. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. I'll take that. That's everything what I need. It's talking about, AI and nonprofits and webinar. But again, it's not perfect. And this is what we called out in the invitation as well, where we said, hey, how many mistakes can you find? And I've actually missed at least one, maybe even two mistakes here. But there's a couple of spelling errors across the board. And you know what? For a lot of cases, that might not be good enough. But for my case, I decided this is fine. I've had a nice little conversation with the chat. It's given me some imagery. It's catchy. It's cute. It's nice. It's attractive. It gets the point across. And actually, it even makes the further point of AI is a great tool, but we still have some ways to go, and you still have, as the human, to decide for yourself for the quality. So anyway, so this was that example. I used ChatGPT to do all of that. Here's some screenshots of how that looked like. The text, of course, way too small to read on this screen, but these are the text that I showed before and then the results it gave me. And you see, like in the ChatGPT style, it's just a very, very clean, elegant stream of, I asked it to do something, it provided something. I gave it feedback about that, and it gave me a new iteration. And so that was really fast and easy way to get a piece of imagery that helped us in promoting this webinar. But that leads a question, right? So which AI should I use for different cases, or which AI should I choose to have in my daily life for all of my workflows? And of course, then what are the options? Well, it turns out, of course, there are many options. Some of these names might be familiar to you. I suspect that some of these you've heard about. Some of these, I'd be shocked if anybody has heard of all of them. Some of these are very technological in nature. They're more about writing code than they are about having a chat interaction. Some of these, like AlphaGo, is only about playing the game Go, so it's very specific. And of course, ChatGPT, very, very popular and in the news very often, and what I also just showed in the previous example. But today, in the live demo that we want to do, we've chosen to use Copilot. Copilot is a product of Microsoft. They are not a sponsor, and we are not endorsing them. But actually, through putting together this presentation, I learned about Copilot kind of for the first time. I hadn't used it before, but after looking into it, I thought it's actually a really good option. And the reason is because it has these two main benefits. First is Microsoft, that owns Copilot, also owns OpenAI. And OpenAI, their flagship product, consumer-facing product, is ChatGPT. And the most advanced ChatGPT model or version is called GPT-4. And if you want to access GPT-4 through ChatGPT, you actually have to have a paid account. But Copilot gives access to the GPT-4 algorithm for free. And you don't even need to have an account at all. You can do it without logging in whatsoever. But it does have a drawback of this limitation of 5 messages if you are not logged in, if you don't have an account, if you are an anonymous logged out viewer, then you can go there and you can use it, but you're limited to 5 messages per 24 hours. Or you can create a free account, and then the limit goes up to 30 messages. And that may very well be more than sufficient for many, many people. It's a low bar of entry. There's the quality is high, the cost is low because it's free, and 30 messages in 24 hours may very well be enough. And if you use other Microsoft tools, calendar and email and other things like this, some of that data gets integrated, and so it turns into a bit of a AI assistant, which is pretty cool as well. So because of these reasons, I thought that for today, we would stick with Copilot and explore that together. But even Microsoft on their homepage does call out, Copilot uses AI, check for mistakes. They know it's not perfect. Nobody's trying to say it's perfect. Everybody admits this is very cool technology, but us humans still have to go in and check what is it giving back to us, and is it accurate? Okay, so that brings us to the live demo, where we are going to write a press release. And you can follow along at home or come back to this recording after the fact. I encourage you, of course, if you came here out Ventures for a press release, then you should also use AI to write a press release for yourself and see what results you get. But results will vary. I've done this test now a couple of times using the same prompts, and I've gotten typically similar responses, but never the exact same response, which is also okay, right? But let's go and have a look at what we can do in Copilot. Okay, so I have a web browser open here, and we are in Copilot. I have logged in. I met my 5 chat maximum yesterday while testing, so I had to log in. So I got the extra credits, and I'm going to start with a very basic, kind of uninformed prompt. And the prompt is going to be, help me write a press release. So we're going to send, and it's going to think for a moment, and it's going to start to type out to us what it is. And it says, certainly, writing a press release is a valuable skill. Very good. And because we haven't told it anything about who we are, it's giving us general information. Now, I did this once, and most times it gives general information about what a press release is and some best practices. But I also had it once just say, sure, I'm happy to help you with that. Tell me more about who you are, what your purposes for your press release are. And it stopped right there, which I think is also a fair response for it to say, actually. But because I didn't ask it to give me best practices, I asked it, write me a press release. And it really can't write me a press release yet. It doesn't know enough about me. But it does say here, like, hey, let's walk through these topics. These are the things you need to consider. We need to understand the purpose, and we need to identify what is the announcement, like what is the newsworthy thing that we want to share. What is your angle? What makes this newsworthy? Why would somebody pick this up? There is a standard format. It gives some information about that, this leading paragraph and the boilerplate at the bottom. We'll get to this later. And it goes through and gives some additional information for what makes a good press release. And it also links to some sources down here. Now, I have to say, other AIs will link to sources, but in my experience, it's like you have to ask for the sources before it gives it to you. And what I've seen in Copilot so far is that they just proactively give you the sources. And I think that's really awesome that you come in here and ask it for information, and then it's just immediately telling you, like, here's my feedback, but don't just take my word for it. Follow these sources for more information. So that's pretty cool. Okay, but it didn't really write us a press release, right? Now, in the event that it had not kind of asked for this sort of information, because like I said, once it just said, great, happy to help you, what do you want? A follow-up could have been like, hey, okay, you want more information from me? Great. Well, what information should I provide you to make a more effective press release for my specific newsworthy information? And so we can put that in as a prompt as well. And in this case, it kind of answered that for us already, but we can ask anyway. Maybe we didn't understand it. Maybe it wasn't specific enough. Maybe in your results, you don't get any sort of outline like that. But here we'll ask, and we see already some of this similar information, right? We have who, what, when, where, why, this body content, this is similar information to what we saw before. So it's kind of already checked this box. It's probably here providing a little bit additional information. Okay, but now let's get serious. Let's say, okay, yeah, good point. I know who we are. I know what we want. Let's get into this. Now, I said I was a child of community theater, and I meant it. I have gone to the theater that I grew up in. It's called City Park Players. It's in Alexandria, Louisiana. I went to their website, and I took some information off their website about who they are, how they describe themselves, and their upcoming summer season. And I just crafted that. It's mostly a copy-paste job, information that already existed, and I've put it into a pretty lengthy post here. So I said, okay, I need help with, let's see. Check this here. Yeah. So I need help with more specifics. Okay, we already did this. Okay. So, we are City Park Players. We're a 501c3. This is who we are, and our purpose is that we want to write a press release to the Town Talk. I've included here some information about their upcoming shows. This is, in case anybody's interested to attend a show, this is all real information except for the audition dates. I fabricated those just for the sake of this demonstration, but the rest of it, it's legit. You should check it out if you're nearby. And then I gave more information about City Park Players. I gave their mission statement. I gave information to become a season contributor. Why not? It was available. And getting all their underwriting and everything else. So now we've provided quite a lot of information about who we are and what it is we're trying to accomplish. If I submit this, it's going to take all that in. Oop. Because it's quite a lot, it might take just a moment to think about it. That's okay. Sometimes, right, in technology, we want these instant responses, and sometimes we get them, and sometimes we don't. It's good to be patient. So, okay, so now it's starting to use the information we gave it and write an actual press release. So it titles it as press release and gives us, City Park Players announces exciting 2024 summer season plays for immediate release, and it hits that format, right? So I understand this text might be small on the screen. It's difficult to make it probably too much larger, But it starts with the format where we have the location followed by the who, and then the when, where, what. And part of that what is the summer season, and so here's information about that season. Here's the information about City Park players. Here's information about being a contributor, and it's rewritten some of this. And so you might want to go in and check that you're not now advertising that your star sponsor level is a wrong price, for example. I believe this one is correct, but anytime you're putting information into AI, it's pretty good at repeating that information back to you, but you always want to check it for accuracy just in case. We have some information here about City Park players and contact information. Looks like we're going to have to fill in some real information there, because that's not none of that looks real to me. And then that boilerplate at the bottom, and then a suggestion that you can put in your logo. So this is actually now something I think that we could actually use as the beginnings of a press release for ourselves. Oh, and how cool. So there's more of that learn more down here, and even some images about what does a press release look like, because visually they should have a certain type of format, right? So what if we say, okay, this looks good to me. I want to edit it now, and I can't really edit it here. So let's ask it, hey, can you provide this to me in a doc file, like a Word file? And actually, we're going to hit a limitation here. And Copilot apologizes and says, hey, I'm sorry, I'm unable to do that. We can't actually produce files. And so it recommends copying the text and then copy and then pasting into a word processing application, and posting it and then editing it there for yourself. And you go, okay, well that's pretty reasonable. You've saved me a lot of time. You've provided me some kind of structure to the task I have at hand. Now I can throw it into a Word doc, and I can make some edits myself, and that's already pretty good. Now, we had a couple of questions about how can you affect tone in AI. And we also had some asked questions like if there's like how much fun can you have with AI? So we thought it could be nice to do something a little bit silly. And one of my favorite things to do in AI since like ChatGPT hit the mainstream last year, is to go through some sort of very serious writing of events or whatever, and in the end ask it to ask it, it might be time to move to a new topic. Now that's interesting. So learning something new here. I never saw that that line before. So maybe we hit some sort of a limit there. But here's what I'm going to do and say, I'm just going to go back in and start a new chat here. I'm going to give it all of our information, what we gave it before. It's going to produce for us something in the realm of hopefully in the realm of what we had before, because what I wanted to demonstrate is something very cute. Okay, maybe we'll see if we can do it here. It's going to write this press release. Let's give it just a moment. And so the point was about tone, right? And sometimes you want it to be a more professional tone. Sometimes you want it to be more whimsical. Maybe you want to apply some humor. And I think it's actually very good with different tones. One of the image generators I used once, I would say, give me images that show this scene in the style of Wes Anderson. And it nailed it every time. It was crazy impressive. But here, I want to say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about our season announcement by writing it in the style of Dr. Seuss? And I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, I mean, I couldn't tell you it's not Dr. Seuss who wrote this. So I'm definitely not going to read this out loud, but you can see that it's off to the races, writing a Dr. Seuss style story here. So, in the heart of Louisiana, where the bayous flow, the City Park players have a tale to bestow. A nonprofit troupe, oh so full of glee, they're ready to unveil their summer spree. It's brilliant. I love it. I don't know. Maybe it's not everybody's flavor, but this sparks so much joy with me. And it may or may not be actually useful, right? That might be amazing content. And maybe it's horrible. I don't know. But it is definitely cute. And it's very interesting that AI can produce something like this so quickly. And so when you want to adjust style, that is one of the things to take in consideration, is just tell it this is what I want it to do or to sound like, and it'll either hit the mark or it won't, but it will it'll certainly try, and it has a lot of information there around which to help you hit those goals. So experiment with that. It can be a lot of fun, as you see there. Yeah. Just a few more slides, and then we'll get to the Q&A. The big thing to take away here is something called prompt engineering. It's a little bit of a technical phrase, but it's definitely been in some headlines. And it's basically about the input. Like, what are you asking the AI to do? How are you asking it? It doesn't know what you're thinking. So you have to tell it, right? So this is what I want you to do for me. This is how I want you to do it. This is how it should sound. And this is kind of what I'm expecting as an outcome. It's very much a garbage in, garbage out situation. And what's really amazing or interesting about these chat style AIs is that they remember your previous inputs, right? You are chatting with it. So you ask it for something, it gives you a response. You provide it with feedback, it gives you a different response. And you do that for as many rounds as you need until you get one of two results. You either get an outcome that's what you needed, expected, or close enough to use it, or you give up. It doesn't give you what you need. But in my experience, in a lot of different fields, these AIs can, if they can't get you all the way there, they can get you pretty darn close. And then, like I said, use your own inputs then to edit the content in your own way to suit your needs in the kind of like that last mile type of space. Microsoft offers this really nice chart on their support page that outlines that a little bit more. They say, hey, look, for when you engineer a prompt, you should tell us, what is the goal? Like, what do you want Copilot to do? By the way, this applies for all AIs, especially the chat style AIs. So this comes from Copilot, but it would be applicable anywhere. So, what is the goal? What do you want it to do? For us, it was write a press release. Okay, well, what's the context? Okay, we're City Park players. We're from here. This is about us. It's our summer season. That's what we want. What are the expectations? Expectations were maybe not super clear. I mean, the outcome was we want a press release, right? So there's a certain format with that and everything else. But, maybe there's a format, maybe there's multiple formats of press releases, and I could have specified one. I'm not sure. But he gave us a press release in the end, and I could have given it some sources, right? I could have said, take information from here or here. Maybe I could have used the City Park Players website instead of copy pasting the information there. I'm actually not even sure. It's worth trying. But yeah, what is the type of information I want you to use while you craft this? And some of that might take more than one prompt, right? You might not get it all in the very first prompt, and you have to come back and work with it a little bit. So the key takeaways: AI isn't perfect. I think the skepticism is well rooted, but that doesn't mean it's not a tool that can be used today, right? There is value there for sure. Doesn't mean it makes sense for every task. It doesn't mean it makes sense for every day or every minute. But think about where we were a year and a half ago. These GPTs and chat whatchamas and open AIs, and nobody was talking about any of this. None of us heard of any of this, and that doesn't mean it didn't exist in a laboratory or somewhere, being worked on. Of course it did. It's been the first large language model algorithm was written over 70 years ago on paper, and it took another 20 years before there was a computer that could even be programmed with it in the most basic way. So this has been going on for a long time. And if you look at that timeline of history, we're in an accelerated rate, right? So it's not perfect, but it's very powerful, and it's just going to continue to become more and more valuable over time. And probably in a very short time, it's going to be able to do even more. And so, learning the basics now totally makes sense, because it's probably something that's not going away. Quality prompts lead to higher quality results. I think we've made that point. And this chat AI, which is so intuitive as a user, as a person interacting with this hugely complex technology, it's a very intuitive user experience to see how can you work with it. And then the more you talk to it, the kind of smarter or intuitive it gets, because it understands better what it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so that's it for this presentation. We're going to move now into the Q&A. I'm going to see if I can get Rob back in here as well to read off some of those questions. But first, I wanted to announce that we are going to do one more of these. At least we'd like to make this a series. If there's enough demand for it, we actually far exceeded expectations in RSVPs for today's, and that was awesome. So we're encouraged to do this again in 2 weeks' time on April 30th. Same day of the week, Tuesday, at the same time of day as we did this one. And that registration form is going to be available online on the iGive website. We'll send out a link after this. It may or may not already be live there now. If you went there now and see today's date, then the form's not ready yet, but it will be within an hour. And that link is also in the description after the link for the Q&A here on the YouTube video. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can bring Rob back into this, and we'll read some questions. All right, Rob, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Let's see if I can move myself into the frame here, and you can hear me. So we've got that piece of the technology down. Thank you very much. And for folks with more gray hair than any other kind of hair, it was nice to hear a sort of a simple approach to this stuff. The first question I see on my screen of questions is, where do you actually get Copilot or ChatGPT?
Yeah, right. So it's a good question. With so many things in this world, Google is your friend. So if you ever can't find anything, searching in Google or Bing or other search engines will tell you a lot. I believe that this was just Microsoft.com/Copilot. Let me check that. Oh, Copilot.Microsoft.com. And I believe ChatGPT is also at OpenAI.com/ChatGPT. But if that's wrong, Google will get you there.
That's cool. Another one of our lovely attendees asked a question about images. Is there an issue with copyright on the images that it may come back at you with?
So this is a great point. There's still there's some open questions about this, and this is part of what we also read about in the newspaper. That is it plagiaristic in nature that these large language models are scouring the internet for information and then adapting that information when they send it on to you? It's a bit of an open question, and there's a lot to be said for is it creative isn't the right word, because AIs really aren't creative. They are digesting something that they've seen and they're regurgitating it, maybe in a different form, maybe wholly in a different form, but it's really hard to trace these things back. This is one of the criticisms that have been out there about ChatGPT and OpenAI, is that they haven't been historically transparent about what the sources are for something that they're displaying to you. That's one of the things that I liked about Copilot, that it shows you these sources. Now those sources may or may not be the text blocks that we see above, but they're at least doing something to say, like, based on this information, here's other places you might want to go, so that you're not just there. So I think this is a great open question. It's something to think about. With images, I'm actually less clear, because even though I understand a little bit from a technical perspective how the large language models technically function, the images to me are almost still magic, and I don't really understand how they're made. It's very impressive stuff, but until now I haven't heard of any major lawsuits or claims to copyright infringements. But there are concerns, and those concerns are probably pretty legitimate. But it's going to take some time before we understand how to piece all those things together.
There are certainly lawsuits on text that people are using. So if you do a story in the style of Stephen King or something, there are a bunch of authors who have sued OpenAI and others to protect their intellectual property rights. It is a very fast-moving environment, one that we're having fun keeping up with ourselves. We've been working using AI a little bit in creating stuff for our website. You want to give us a quick highlight of some of the things you found that worked really well, and while you do that, I'm going to review some of the other questions.
Well, I think there's two areas in which we've been using AI. One is it's an example that we also saw from the audience, which was asking for variations of texts, where we might say, here's a tagline we want to use. What are some other versions around that? Help us play with the language a little bit. Help us understand, what might be more playful. Or here's a blog post, we want to promote it on Facebook. Help us write a short description for that, which is part of what we're going to go into in the next webinar. The other piece is technical. So when we're working in the website itself, if we come across a piece of code that we need to adapt or change, or something we want to do and we're not totally sure what we should do there, we can just copy and paste the code and say, like, hey, explain this to me. Help me understand. What does this code do? Okay, all right, now I understand. Thank you. Here's what we want it to do. How do we do that? And I have to say, AI is pretty good. I think it's not perfect, but it's pretty good at like understanding those type of technical things, because those things are supposed to work kind of in one way. And there's different ways to write code to achieve the same end, of course. But a lot of that stuff it's seen, and this is actually an area where I do get concerns, where there's only so many ways to write a thing, and it's seen all those ways. Is it just giving me somebody else's code right now? I don't have an answer for that, but it has been hugely valuable to me to help understand how different code and systems work, for sure. It's been revolutionary. I've learned a lot in the last year.
So we have a question that's a very nuts and bolts question. How do you get an image into a press release?
Okay, so it depends, I think, on where you're writing the press release. So what we saw before when we were doing the text demonstration is that we don't have the ability to create a doc, and it said that we should put that into a Google Doc or a Word doc or any other type of text editor. And if that text editor supports images, then it'll have some way in which you can add an image there. If you wanted to use a AI generated image, then you would do something similar to what we talked about earlier in the first example of how we created the image for promoting this webinar. But what I would recommend there is don't start with the image. Start with the press release, and then at the end say, can you help me create an image that could accompany this press release? Because now it already has all the information about the press release or about that context, right? Going back to the chat is learning and remembering and adapting based on what you've asked it in the previous messages. So now it's going to be even more equipped to create an image that might be suitable for your case.
So as you've used AI to create press releases, is there something that we shouldn't be using AI for in the creation of a press release, where you think that it's going to be either a waste of time or the output's going to just be junky?
The list of things you shouldn't use AI for is probably much longer than the list of things you should use it for. But I think the big thing to keep in mind is I don't think there's any harm in going to an AI tool and experimenting, right? But before you go and publish the results, be sure always review, check for accuracy, make sure it really says what you think it says, that it says it in the best way. It is very much a trust but verify situation. The tools are very impressive, but cannot stress enough that none among us should be trusting the AI to just do our jobs for us, right? We still have a responsibility to do the proofreading and to check that everything is accurate.
Well, that's sort of the end of the questions for today. I want to remind folk that support.igive.com is your friend. There's lots of stuff there, and there's going to be more stuff. I'm going to throw it back to Judson to take us home.
All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. This has been really fun. Our first webinar, our first YouTube live stream. I look forward to hearing further comments in the future and to seeing the other stuff that was being written while I was busy talking. And hope that you'll consider to join us again in 2 weeks' time. And we will send a email shortly with information about that webinar and also a link to watch the video from this webinar. Please invite your friends and tell others to join you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Right. Bye-bye.